The point is that this pathologically self-absorbed narcissist enjoys the attention and self-congratulations.
Whoa. Don't just call someone pathologically self-obsessed narcissist. There was no evidence of that in that video clip. Either Matt Walsh watched something different than he's showing us, or his ability to read between the lines or read into a video is extraordinary. Hello lovely people, my name is Emma, welcome back to my channel, welcome if you are new. Today we are going to be taking a look at a Matt Walsh video that was recommended to me by a viewer, so thank you very much for that. If you're not familiar with Matt Walsh, don't even worry, I'll bring you up to speed. Matt Walsh is an American political commentator, he's a writer and a podcaster, very conservative, he works for the Daily Wire, and by extension Ben Shapiro, so they share a lot of views. To try and describe Matt Walsh's content that he makes, you know when you see on the internet those people who go around calling everybody a snowflake, but they personally overreact massively to things that don't matter? That's Matt Walsh's content. Before we go into the video, a couple of people have actually messaged me asking if I was going to talk about his book that came out recently, because that was kind of a shockwave on the internet. So I'll talk about this really briefly. I am going to recommend that you go and check out Savvy Wright's books. Her video is actually reacting to his reaction to criticism of the book, but it's great because Savvy's an author of children's books. This is a kid's book that he wrote, by the way. He's written several books before, but those have been adult books. This is for children. But that's a great video coming from the perspective of an author and a reviewer, and how his kind of knee-jerk reaction to people criticising his writing is damaging to authors and reviewers in general. So definitely recommend that for a further view. Here's my take on it. Basically, he wrote this board book for children. It was widely criticised for being transphobic, and he responded extremely negatively to, honestly, very reasonable criticism. The main critique and the problem I had just as a book was that he has 4 children, but his understanding of children has just not translated into the book at all. It's just not appropriate for kids. It's not inappropriate in the sense of, the content is inappropriate or anything. It's not appropriate in the sense that the language is far too complicated. The themes that he's trying to tackle are way too nuanced for children to have any understanding of. He's trying to discuss issues that kids at that age, where they would be reading that board book, they just wouldn't get it. There's this video and he's reading this book to a group of kids and he's sat there like, do you know what a bigot is? And they're all like, Savvy talks about this all in more detail, but there's also like a really scary looking page that would definitely haunt me as a kid. When I was little, I had a book called Under the Stairs that gave me serious nightmares, and I still think about it sometimes. Anyway, it talks about like bad internet people, and it doesn't really make sense, and the kids just have no idea what he's talking about. My main problem there is not just that, like, this is clearly not written with children in mind, but that I think there is a market for adult parody board books. Satirical children's books for adults is like a genre that has relatively taken off recently, right? Take a look at Sam Kills Christmas, the Ladybird books for adults, Go the Fuck to Sleep. There's a market for it. There's definitely a market within his audience to release a board book as a satire for adults who would actually understand what he was talking about. When reviews pointed out the fact that this isn't really age appropriate and doesn't really make sense for children, he kind of lashed out like a petulant child and said things like, yeah, I reached out to an expert children's author myself. I don't know how you can be an expert in something you've never done before. I know that this kind of grumpy petulance in the face of criticism maybe creates like an engaging character for viewers. I can only hope that he's not like that in real life. In the video we're looking at today, you will see more of that same just massive overreaction to non-issues. Honestly, the more people like this I watch, the more I am totally convinced that the ultra-conservatives are the real snowflakes. So I'll leave a link down below to Savvy's video on him responding to criticism of his book, and now we will go take a look at one of Matt Walsh's videos. So the video we're going to be looking at today is called Why Are So Many Teachers Coming Out as LGBT to Their Students? Now, Matt Walsh is very outspoken in being opposed to gay marriage, things like that. I should have mentioned this earlier. If you want another example as to why I think he tends to overreact a little to things, he doesn't think Christians should do yoga. So I have a feeling this video about teachers coming out as LGBT, as he puts it, is going to be, again, a bit of an overreaction to a non-issue, which is kind of what happens when groups of people like this try to demonize some community as an other. All LGBTQ plus people are scary because some teacher somewhere is telling the kids that they're gay. You know, I thought this would be the most appropriate mug for the video. Something I want to make sure we return to at the end. I want to know if Matt Walsh actually answers the question in his title, why are so many teachers coming out? Or if it's just like a rhetorical for the heading. I'm interested to know if he comes up with a theory as to why this phenomenon is happening. So let's just see.
One of the major reasons why nothing works in this country and all of our institutions are collapsing is that very few people...
Little bit of overreaction. If you live in the USA, let me know if your country's going to shit and all your institutions are collapsing. Sometimes it seems like it's pretty rough over there, but I didn't think it was that bad.
Especially those running those institutions are capable of seeing beyond themselves. They don't care about anything greater than themselves. They don't recognize that anything greater than themselves can even exist. They certainly aren't focused on the larger mission of the institution, but instead are totally enveloped in their own egos.
I almost feel like I missed something because I don't know who the they is that he's talking about, which is another very common thing when we watch this kind of video. They don't care about anyone greater than themselves. I don't know who they are, so I have no way of confirming or denying this. It's a very subjective kind of opinion statement anyway, so there's not really much we can check there.
This intense self-focus destroys every institution down to the smallest and most essential one, like the family. The institution can't survive if everybody within that institution, everybody who's in charge of leading it, spends all day staring at their own reflections.
I would say as a statement, I agree. That is probably factually true. I'm not aware of any institutions wherein the people involved are spending all day staring at their reflections. I think probably a lot of corporations are extremely self-centered, but I get the feeling that's not what Matt Walsh is talking about here.
Somebody needs to be focused on the grander, broader vision. Somebody needs to take the long view, a view in which they are not the central figure. But few people these days are capable of that.
Says who? Few people these days are capable of that. Just the first thing that comes to mind when he says that for me is environmentalism and how environmental activism is at like an all-time high because people care so desperately about the bigger picture, about the future of this planet, future generations. He's not being specific about what people don't care about, what bigger picture people don't care about, but because that's the first thing that comes to my mind, it makes me think that it's probably not accurate across the board. Of course, I will caveat that and say that he is, from the get-go, he said he's talking about the United States, and I don't live there, so he could be right, and I'd really value your thoughts if you're in the USA. Please leave them down below. So I might just not have the specific insight into what it's like over there, but I definitely feel like I know lots of people and institutions that do care about the bigger picture. So I feel like he's generalizing and overreacting a little bit.
There's a term that's become popular on social media called main character syndrome. This describes people who imagine themselves to be the protagonists, the leads, and their lives to be some sort of cinematic feature film in which they are the star. You could really just use the term narcissist here because it has basically the same meaning.
You could. I would argue that main character syndrome is more specifically related to what he's talking about and is quite a good kind of description for when you're talking about people that you don't know, attributing mental health disorders to people that you don't know, calling people narcissists off the bat, demonizes people that actually suffer from issues of narcissism, and you just shouldn't assume people have mental health issues. You shouldn't assume anybody's mental health situation. So I think it's much better in this situation to use the term main character syndrome. Even though it does imply a syndrome, I think it's a lot more kind of casual. You're not using like medical terminology. I guess it's personal preference, but I guess I just disagree with Matt on that.
Except that main character syndrome is helpful because it captures the way that so many people today tend to not only place themselves at the center of the universe, but also fictionalize the universe at the same time. They're the main characters in the story of their lives, but that story has only a tangential relationship to the truth. I mean, it's sort of based...
We could go off in a really interesting philosophical discussion here about what is objective truth. aren't all our understandings of our lives just subject to our own experiences and what we see and how we view the world? Is there any connecting underlying truth to all of it that connects us all? But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about naughty teachers coming out to their students. We'll pencil the philosophical discussion in for another day.
Based on true events, at best. We could take this main character phenomenon and relate it back to the collapse of our societal institutions, and there's probably no institution.
This makes it sound like he's like a radio host talking in a post-apocalyptic future. He's just gone on about how people are almost viewing their lives in like a fictitious way, and he's talking about the collapse of American society as though that's like a pinpointed historical event that happened recently that he's talking about, whereas I think that's his over-dramatization of changes that he views as negative in American culture.
That suffers more from this problem than the education system. The problem in education today, well, one of the great many problems, is not just that so many teachers are intensely ideological, but that they're also intensely self-centered, which leads them to believe that it can never be inappropriate for them to indoctrinate their students. After all, the class...
I wonder, are American teachers more ideological and self-centered? Just asking questions.
Their teaching is really all about them. Everything's about them. They are the subject.
Again, not from the USA. Maybe this is a phenomenon that is happening over there. I know a lot of teachers in the UK, they do it because they love kids. They do it because they want to pass something on to the next generation. They want to help people learn. They just love to help people learn. I don't know any teacher personally. This is just anecdotal, but he's not given us any kind of... It's not like he's read studies that suggest that teachers these days are more selfish. He's just saying that. He's just making that accusation. So I'm just going to use anecdotal evidence in response because that's all we kind of have in this. We're not really going to get anywhere factually here. I'll just say that all the teachers I know do it for love of teaching and love of the students. My mum was a teacher.
They've been hired to teach history or algebra or English literature or whatever, but their real job, as far as they're concerned, is to shape the students into little versions of themselves.
I mean, just... Show me your data, Matt Walsh.
And all of this explains the recent trend of teachers coming out to their students during class. I've seen at least 3 videos documenting this in just the last few weeks. We played one several days ago where a high school teacher records himself in class as he called the students' attention to himself and proceeded to inform them that he is non-binary and his preferred pronouns are all pronouns. He is all things to all people, as the Apostle Paul once wrote, though in a very different context. We're not going to play that video again, but we do have 2 more. First, here's
I might have to look that up later.
Another non-binary teacher talking about her experiences coming out to her students, and she's talking about them in response to a question from another teacher who is also non-binary, and here's what she says.
You can be reasonably assured that you are safe being out on your campus, then do it. Before coming out as non-binary, I would come out to my students every October on National Coming Out Day. I would use that as an opportunity for my students to learn how to receive somebody coming out to them in case that had never happened to them before. We used it as a way to talk to each other about empathy, about connection, about trust. It ended up being a wonderful experience that I had with my students every single year. So think about what you would have needed when you were in high school or middle school or whatever grade you're teaching. For some students, just the knowledge that a queer adult exists within their world is hugely impactful. You don't really have to do anything other than be visible for these students to feel safer and more accepted and more at home when they're on campus. For that reason, my classroom is one of the gayest places probably on the planet. Everything is completely covered in rainbows. I've got flags everywhere. I've got queer literature because I want every student that I have to know that being queer is something that I am proud of, something that is not a secret in my life. It's something that I care about and something that connects me to other people. I'll end by saying that for me, being visibly queer is a non-negotiable. I introduced myself this year with my pronouns immediately. It was one of the first things that students learned about me.
You know, somehow the most irritating part of that was still the word impactful.
What an immediately negative reaction to what was just quite a nice video.
Just an awful word. But that's beside the point. The point is that this pathologically self-absorbed narcissist enjoys the attention and self-congratulations.
Whoa. See, this is why earlier I explained that I think it's more appropriate if you feel this way about a person, to use like main character syndrome if you think that's what it is, or describe them in other ways. Don't just call someone pathologically self-obsessed narcissist. There was no evidence of that in that video clip. Either Matt Walsh watched something different than he's showing us, or that his ability to read between the lines or read into a video is extraordinary. I have like a few notes just based on this one like video clip that he's shared. This was kind of framed in a think of the children kind of way, the education system, kids. It was kind of like, it was never explicitly said, so maybe that's my fault for how I read it. But I kind of got the impression that it was like teachers and kids, and whereas this person is clearly talking about like a university campus, in which case you're talking to adults, and it's a very different situation. The other thing, so this isn't somebody like going, right kids, this is exactly what this is, I'm going to teach you all about sexualities in my class, it doesn't relate to it, it's going to be this and that. This is just somebody saying, hi class, these are my pronouns, and just making, setting up their classroom in a way that makes it clear that this is a safe place. I think that's a good thing. I guess if you don't support queer people of any kind, like Matt Walsh, then I can see how he would have a problem with that. LGBT people do exist. If you personally want to pretend that they don't, do what you want, but I don't think you should have an impact on the education system. So here's the thing with like coming out and pronouns and stuff. Look at Matt Walsh. He's a pretty typical gender-conforming man, right? You're probably not. I think probably it's never happened to Matt Walsh that somebody has looked at him and be like, I'm not sure what to call him. Those of us short-haired individuals who are less gender-conformative in a traditional way, sometimes people misgender us. Like, sometimes it happens to cis people. You don't have to be a trans person to experience misgendering sometimes, and it usually doesn't matter, it's just a polite thing. I've been bundled up in winter clothes at a train station, just trying to buy a coffee, and the poor person who's just dealing with a big queue of people is like, hello sir, ma'am, sir, ma'am. In that situation, I'd just be like, ma'am's fine, can I have a coffee? And we all move on with our lives. Would Matt Walsh consider that me coming out to the poor barista and like trying to educate her because I'm so self-centered that I'm educating people just because I'm technically coming out as a cis woman? If you were, say, a gay teacher, the kind of standard default way of being would be to come out realistically, because to avoid coming out, if you were a married gay teacher, you would have to actively prevent your spouse from coming to your workplace, from encountering anyone. If any student ever asked you, oh, are you married, sir? You'd either have to lie and hide it, or you'd have to come out, technically. And that's the same whether you're straight. If Matt Walsh walked into a classroom and one of the kids was like, not looking, was like, hi miss, and he said, I prefer sir, that's technically him coming out. Do you see what I'm getting at? I think Matt Walsh hasn't considered this because he does look like a very traditional masculine man. I get this all the time because I have short hair. I'm still a cis woman. Like, it's just a fact of life. I'm not being a self-absorbed narcissist telling people that I'm a woman. Like, it's absurd. It's really absurd. Like, what this teacher was talking about, I don't even know if teacher is the appropriate term. If this is like a college campus, I think it would probably be more like lecturer or professor would be more appropriate. Which again, it's only a small thing, but the type of language and the way that people with very conservative traditional values have emotional responses to talks about children and educating children by teachers, I think it's an important distinction. This was just a teacher of some kind being like, I talk to my students about my pronouns, we have a really nice time discussing it every year, and they know it's a place where they can be safe and welcome. There's no malicious intent, there's nothing remotely narcissistic about that, there's nothing, and this was the teacher answering a question that somebody else had asked. It wasn't like this teacher is just bringing it up out of nowhere, like, I'm non-binary and you should all come out to your... They weren't pushing an agenda, they were just giving advice based on their nice, positive experience. And Matt Walsh is like, this is the most irritating thing I've ever seen! Like, calm down, Matt. Nothing's happening here. It's okay. Relax.
flagellation of coming out so much that she does it every year. She has, by her own admission, turned her entire...
I really hope that he is getting this person's pronouns correct. Because he didn't say on the video, there's nothing to say what this person's pronouns are. I just know that they're non-binary. Because I don't know, I'd rather refer to them using they, them, just like I would if I don't know anybody's gender or preferred pronouns. Matt Walsh could be completely correct. They could be completely fine with the pronouns that he's using. I'm just concerned that he might not care enough to be doing due diligence there.
Classroom into a temple to herself.
No, it's not no. Okay, Matt Walsh. This is a rainbow flag. What this flag means, and the reason I have it is, as A, it looks cute, and it's fun, and it's got bright colours, and I love bright colours. It's also just can be a little fun indicator that this is a safe place for people who are sometimes marginalised, right? If this flag had a big picture of my face on it, that would be maybe a little bit narcissistic. If the room was covered in little flags with my own face on it, God, that would be so funny. And I had like banners that said Emma in big letters everywhere, you'd probably walk into my office and be like, this is a selfish, narcissistic temple to themselves. Having queer literature available and like having flags and things, there's nothing self-centered about that. It's not about the self. It's not about the self. It's about making, like the person said in the video, it's about making the students feel comfortable. It's about giving them experience in something that they might not have encountered. There's a reason that people who tend to go to university, because they are exposed to a more diverse range of people, put this flag down, I'm going to keep playing with it, it's going to rustle in the background. There's a reason that those people tend to end up more accepting of others and less like Matt Walsh.
The only thing that's missing is like the incense and the hooded monks chanting in an ancient language.
I just think that's a hypocritical thing for a religious person to say. I mean, I guess he has a problem with incense the same way he has a problem with yoga, right? Even though Matt Walsh has no issue celebrating all of the pagan traditions that Christianity latched onto. That's fine.
As there's this religious temple of self-worship. Every day in her classroom, it is a chance for all of her students to join her in worshiping herself. It is a celebration of her own.
No, it's not. He's making all this up. He's just saying this, it's not true. There's nothing about there's nothing about this person worshipping themselves. It's not giving the students an opportunity to worship their teacher. Again, if that person was like, had big pictures of themselves all over the room and were like, hey, everybody, let's talk about me now, then that would be, this kind of jokey exaggeration would be appropriate. It's not at all. Just existing as a queer person is not selfish. It's not narcissistic. I really feel for children of parents who watch Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro talk about this kind of thing, because it puts so much guilt onto people for just existing as themselves. Just being a gay person and having a pride flag in your classroom is selfish and inconsiderate and ruining American institutions. Baloney. Such an enormous overreaction.
Own sexual proclivities. And she doesn't feel weird about inviting kids to take part in that celebration, or forcing them to, in fact.
They shouldn't feel weird about it. It's quite normal. And he's saying kids again. He's specifically saying kids. I just want to remind you that that person said, if your campus is a safe place for you to do this, then I think you should. Not only do it if you think it's, going to be a vaguely accepting environment. Maybe in the USA, correct me if I'm barking up the wrong tree here, is campus a way you would refer to a school in the USA? Because here the only time I've ever heard anybody say campus is in reference to a university, which teaches adults, fellow adults. And that's obviously quite a young teacher, so it's going to be good for young adults to hear from the experiences of that person. There's nothing crazy or evil about that. It's not harming the kids. I strongly suspect, unless I am wrong about this, I strongly suspect kids aren't remotely involved anyway, because I think this might be a person who teaches adults. Because
this is her we're talking about. And what could be more important? What subject could be more pressing than the subject of herself?
This is all he's just making this up. He's taken one short video and he's invented a caricature, a straw man of this non-binary person to portray them as selfish, and he just keeps repeating how selfish they are, how it's a temple to this person, it's so selfish, talking about their own sexual proclivity, whatever the fuck he said. All of this is made up. It's a complete fabrication, what he's doing right now, but he's using emotive language, and he's saying it over and over again in a convincing voice, so that scared Christian parents who are predisposed to be afraid of people who are different, people who they've not had the opportunity to meet and experience as just normal people, he's reinforcing those fears through his use of language.
That was also the approach of the teacher in the next clip, who recorded a video sharing her thoughts after having just come out to her 6th grade students.
Okay, so this is actually kids. 6th grade, let me just... What age is that in the real world? Year 7, 11 to 12, okay. It
was important that the 6th graders be told, who she likes to sleep with. They really needed to know that information.
Again, I went through this already once, so I'm not going to go back in massive detail. Teachers usually come out to their kids because if you're a teacher and you're married or you have a partner, kids will ask you about it, okay? Sometimes they'll come to the school. It just happens. Same if you're a straight person. If I am a straight woman teaching a class of kids and I'm married, they're going to be like, oh, are you married? And I'll be like, yes, I have a husband, he's called this. That's technically me coming out in exactly the same way. Just there's no stigma attached to it. And Matt Walsh doesn't mind people being straight, so he doesn't register that it's the same thing.
About their teacher's sexual behavior, so she was sure to inform them.
Sexuality is not about... I was going to say sexuality is not about sex, but the fact that it's even in the word makes me feel like that's going to sound redundant and people are going to take the piss. Sexuality is not just about who you sleep with. We know that. Queer people have existed forever. Telling someone you're gay is not telling someone about your sexual habits. Telling someone that you're straight, again, even indirectly, like saying, this is my husband, that is telling people as much about your, sexual desires, your sexual habits, as telling someone you're gay. It's the same thing. It gives the exact same information. Matt Walsh must understand this. He either isn't very intelligent, or he knows this, and he's pretending it's a scary, horrible thing only if you're queer, so that people will click his videos and engage out of fear. To impose these fear tactics on an audience. Which is pretty shameful, I think, and not very Christian.
So I just came out to my students. I've been wanting to do this for the past 2 years.
This music might be copyrighted. I'm going to pop the captions on just in case I end up having to mute this, because it's got music in the background.
So I just came out to my students. I've been wanting to do this for the past 2 years. Sorry, I'm so emotional. And I just haven't had the courage to do it out of fear of just judgment, mostly from their parents.
And people like Matt Walsh.
I had these kids in 4th grade, and now I have them in 6th, and I'm sending them to middle school, and I love these kids so much, and I trust them, and they make me feel safe, and I know they love me, and it just felt right, and I did it, and it was so beautiful. They had so many questions, which I loved. They wanted to learn, and they wanted to learn about me, and they were so eager, and a few of them clapped, which was so precious.
So you notice how this was a spontaneous and emotional video revealing her true feelings, and yet she took the time to edit and add the inspirational soundtrack in the background. I mean, it's hard to think.
Every conservative influencer we've looked at has included emotional piano music in the background. So this person just did an emotional thing and they wanted to share it, and they wanted more views, so they added emotional music. I understand that it can make it more frustrating to watch. God, I complain about it with the conservative people we look at all the time, so I'll accept this as a fair criticism. But I don't think we should claim that it means that this didn't happen the way she's saying it happened.
Think of a better example of main character syndrome than that. Notice also how she says that they make me feel safe. That's an adult woman, a teacher, referring to the 11-year-olds in her classroom. And she says that...
Is he going to elaborate on why that's a problem? I think what that statement says is terribly sad for a completely different reason than Matt Walsh does. I think it's so sad that people don't feel comfortable and don't feel safe in front of, say, the parents, because of that fear of judgment. I just think it's sad that only the young, curious, eager to learn people who haven't been exposed to that kind of judgmental views, who Matt Walsh's kind of judgmental views, only those people can be so encouraging in this situation. I think that's a real shame.
They wanted to learn about me. And maybe they did, or maybe they felt forced.
Dude, he's got 4 kids. How does he not understand kids this badly? Of course kids want to learn about you. Have you ever taught a class? Like I said, my mum was a teacher. They loved her because she's the best. But they were all over her all the time. They wanted to know, oh, are you married? Are you this? Are you that? They want to learn about their teachers, because teachers are like this weird other species, you know? When you're that age, you think they live in the school, and when you find out they've got a life outside, you're like, what? Tell me everything. I'm confused. I don't understand. That's just, kids are extremely curious. The fact that they wanted to learn about her is very realistic and normal.
To pretend that they did. But whatever the case, do we send kids to school so that they can learn about their teachers?
No, but does it happen just as a consequence of just being around a human being? Teachers are also human beings, right? The teachers that kept me and my schoolmates the most engaged at school were the ones that told us stories, that engaged us about their lives and wove it into their teaching. It made it approachable, it made it interesting. The teachers that just stick to the textbook and nothing else, those are the boring snooze teachers that you learn nothing from. And okay, teaching styles is a subjective thing, but Matt Walsh is saying this like it's an objective problem for a teacher to ever reveal anything about their life to a student. And yet, I 100% believe that if a straight teacher was talking to a class of kids about their partner, their straight partner, and it was a heterosexual relationship, he would never bring it up. He would see no problem in it. It's only a problem if the person isn't straight or cis. It's only a problem when the gays are doing it. Maybe self-reflect on that a little bit, Matt Walsh.
As far as these teachers are concerned, the answer is yes. What subject could be more important than the subject of themselves? And on the subject of themselves...
Again, he's just extrapolating this from nothing. He's just making it up to make these teachers sound horrible and to make all American teachers sound awful, which is just absurd and deeply insulting.
What could be a more important detail than their sex lives? See, they see themselves as defined by their sex lives.
These teachers are all so self-serving, says Matt Walsh on The Matt Walsh Show, who said he didn't need to contact an expert on writing children's books because he's the expert, having never written one before. Like, the fact that teachers come out to their students sometimes, compared with Matt Walsh and the way he self-advertises and presents himself, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if you're gonna keep calling people selfish narcissists just for existing, I don't know, maybe you're trying to deflect something? Maybe you feel a little bit of personal guilt over some selfishness in your own life? I'm just guessing, because that's apparently what we do on The Matt Walsh Show.
And they see the world as revolving around themselves, which means that the world revolves around their sex lives.
No, it doesn't. Again, if you're straight and you tell someone you're straight, if you're a woman and you introduce someone to your husband, technically, you're telling them about your sex life, just as much as anybody who is gay is. But you're not actually, because we're reasonable people and we understand that human relationships exist and that those can exist with or without sex, and it's not really our place to question or judge. Maybe Matt Walsh, genuinely, when Matt Walsh hears that somebody is in a relationship or hears somebody talking about their relationship, maybe his mind instantly goes to sex, and that's why he's got this warped view.
This mentality makes for dysfunctional people. And with enough of these people in the education system, whatever their sexual orientation, it makes for a dysfunctional education system. And that is why teachers who come out to their students are today, certainly, and finally, cancelled.
Back to my earlier question. Will Matt Walsh actually answer the question that is the title of his video, why are so many teachers coming out as LGBT to their students? No. It's just a hypothetical, I guess. So he's got no theories other than all teachers, at the very least all queer teachers, are selfish for allowing their pupils, even if those pupils are adults, for allowing their pupils to know any details of their life, like who their romantic partner is, or their pronouns. How do you even talk to somebody without knowing their correct pronouns? I gave an example earlier. I gave the example earlier of me buying a coffee at the train station. That was technically me coming out, but that was just because the person talking to me wasn't sure of my pronouns. Because I was all fucking dressed up in winter gear and have short hair. Like, it's not a big deal. It's just a normal human interaction you have sometimes. So, that's Matt Walsh. Kind of proud of my prediction because I think it was 100% spot on. Massive overreaction to absolutely nothing. 2 short video clips of teachers, one who teaches older people, possibly adults, one who teaches kids, talking about when they came out to their students. Even the fact that he's got so many in the title, but he produced no data to back up any of his statements, and he only showed 2 video clips. Those could be the only 2 in the world, for all we know. Or there would be he mentioned that he played 1 the other day, so there are at least 3, but I don't think those 3 are enough to bring down the institutions of America. He is so passionate about keeping anything to do with teachers' personal lives out of the classroom. Is he as passionate about keeping religion out of the classroom? Because he should be. If he's that dedicated to keeping the classroom pure, he should agree that religion has no place in the classroom, that the Bible has no place in the classroom. I'd love to know what he thinks about that. So there we are. Let me know what you thought about that. Do give your thoughts, especially if you are in the USA. If you're a teacher, that's even better. If you're recently out of the education system, what is your take on what Matt Walsh says about how the American education system is in ruin? Do you think he's actually got some good points? Do you think that he's completely off base, but maybe it's falling apart for another reason? Just let me know, because he doesn't give us any facts or data, I can only guess and, try and look things up, but I'm not finding anything to suggest that his, crazy exaggerated fear-mongering is close to reality. So, yeah, do let me know what you think. You can go to emma-thorne.com if you want to sip out of a tasty citation-needed mug, or wear a cool citation-needed hat or whatever when you're watching this kind of ridiculousness. I would, watching this, I would call Matt Walsh a snowflake. I think he is a little bit of a snowflake. I think the fact that he's so adamant that these other people who are just living their lives are self-centered and selfish, I think he might be projecting. Okay, I could ramble on forever, so I will say thank you so much for watching. Before we go, I'd like to give a huge shout out and a big thank you to my giant chickens over on Patreon: Aaron Speer, Amalgam of Neuroses, Amber, Bert Whitehead, Chantale, Chris Simpson, Connie Wright, Conla Chicken Maximus Lyons, God damn it, Conla, Cory Garner, Curious Capybara, Danny, Denny5252, Dr. Mint, Elle, Faye Gregory, Fulcrum, Gaming Ridge, Gay of Reckoning, George Bush, Henry Curtis, Izzy, Jason Metcalf, Joe Rowe, John Fry, John Smith, Kent Woodward, Chris Convaga, Lizzie Gale, Lim Dobbs, Mattis McChicken Nuggetus, Miles Tegg, Mogarenga, Mr. Creosote, Nerd Fiction, Ninja Red, Peter Kiruk, Psyched Dude, Kike, Rosina Keller, Sarah Shavy, Simping on Emma Thorne, Seriously, Tank Low, The Enchanter formerly known as Tim, The Myth Vision Podcast, Tracy O'Rourke, and Wasatch Witch. Thank you so much, you guys are amazing. Have a very lovely week, and I will see you really soon.